is number 23 Kansas State at number 7 Texas, 12 p.m. Eastern time on Fox. And the big question, honestly, is Quinn Ewers once again going to be out? Because Pete Thamel reported that his shoulder injury is about 2 to 4 weeks, which means there's a slight chance he could suit up against Kansas State, but honestly, he probably won't with that grade 2 AC joint sprain in his throwing shoulder. So Malik Murphy will probably get a second career start. He had a 60.9 passing grade last week, 3 big-time throws, 2 ugly turnover-worthy plays. So I just don't think Texas can really have a roller coaster performance under center like that, Dalton, if they want a chance to keep their playoff hopes alive in this one.
No, I totally agree, and we've talked about Texas, and I think for the moment, if you have Murphy or Manning or another backup quarterback in there, Texas, they are what they are, right? They're going to run it down your throat with Brooks. They're going to play good defense. They're going to keep the game in the box, and they're going to score somewhere in the mid to high 20s, depending on who they're playing. They're just going to need to play complementary football, and the rest of their team is going to have to carry this thing. Murphy didn't show us a whole lot last week. He didn't have to. We talked about the advantages that Texas had in the trenches against BYU. That showed up. They really have to show us how well-rounded. And actually, to be honest, they've been that well-rounded all year. Outside of the Alabama game, Ewers has been more solid than spectacular. So they're kind of used to this, but it's getting stressed to a greater extent. And it's really going to come to a head this week, especially on their defense against Kansas State, who's raging hot right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there a specific matchup, Dalton, that you're really looking forward to in this game?
Yeah, I was looking into, so Kansas State's been hot. They've scored 40 points a game over their last 3. And a few weeks ago, they got really, I don't want to say embarrassed, but they looked really bad on a Friday night against Oklahoma State. And what it came down to was their passing game just failed them. Dropping back too much. Will Howard's a very good play-action passer, but the drop-back game is not their game, right? And I imagine they went into a meeting after that game and said, how can we fix this passing game? And the conclusion they came to is, actually, we're not gonna fix it. What we're gonna do is we're gonna start playing our second quarterback, Avery Johnson, who's a wicked athlete, and we're just gonna turn up the turbo on this run game. Okay, the last 3 weeks, Will Howard's only taken 45 dropbacks in the last 3 weeks. They're only throwing the ball 15 to 20 times a game, couple for Johnson here and there, but they have just totally turned into this team that centers everything around the run game, and it is as nasty a run game as you can get. And over the last 3 weeks, they're the second highest graded offense in the country. They put in Howard for a couple drives. They put in Johnson for a drive or two, and Howard can run the ball too. He's a good athlete too. But they have designed this thing, and they could already run the ball well with the backs. But what Avery Johnson has brought to them, coming in, in part-time duty, is he's created more space in this run game. You see it with Giddens and Treshaun Ward. Like when they just kind of run straight ahead with Howard, traditionally it looks like good but not great. The element of quarterback run that's been added to this offense, along with everything they do schematically, they run power, they run counter, they run options, they run jet sweeps. They're all over the place with this run game. They lead the Power 5 in the last 3 weeks in quarterback rush attempts. All right, they have 50. All right, the next closest team in design quarterback rush attempts in the last 3 weeks has 34. Wow. All right, so you've got read option, you've got even just straight quarterback, just sweeps to the edges. They motion all over the place. They cause a ton of problems. We talk about there's some coaches that if they could, they would run the ball every single play. Right now at Kansas State, that's what they're doing. They are going to run it down your throat till you are out of gas, and they're going to keep doing it. And just what Johnson and even Howard to an extent have brought, creating space, freezing defenders. And then they use so many pulling linemen, Cooper Beebe and the guys up front, pulling like crazy. Power, counter. There's so much misdirection, along with just a really good, powerful offensive line that can mow you down. The combination of those two things makes their run game absolutely lethal. And I think Texas, look, they have the 5th best run D against gap schemes. Okay, and Kansas State runs more gap scheme runs. You think about running straight ahead, running power, running counter, those sorts of things. But Texas hasn't seen a ton of it. Actually, the 4th fewest reps against it in the Power 5. So you've got, if you take out their game against Rice, they're a little more like above average than elite. This is going to be a major, major issue for Texas. All right. And they also have the second worst EPA per play against quarterback runs. So all the combination of all of these things, Giddens, Ward, Howard, and Avery Johnson, who he looks tall and lanky and skinny and all. He is blazing fast. When I tell you, if he gets a crease, he's gone. He is gone.
Yeah.
The spacing in their run game right now and how disciplined you have to be against Kansas State, this is going to be the ultimate test for Texas's front seven.
Dude, Avery Johnson. So Avery Johnson, by the way, true freshman. He was a top 10 quarterback recruit coming out of high school in that Arch Manning class. So he's a true freshman doing this. So he's the quarterback of the future for Kansas State. He ran a 4.54 in the 40 in high school. Like, this is a really good athlete, like you mentioned. He jumped about 37 inches in the vertical as well. On 3 Sports, his comparison that I kind of love coming out was Pat White. You remember Pat White, electric quarterback at West Virginia. That's kind of what Avery Johnson has been like. So I love that, he's the quarterback of the future for Kansas State, and he's the quarterback right now for them as well, really making some big plays for them while Will Howard is still kind of the starting quarterback. So, yeah, great breakdown. I love Cooper Beebe versus Devondre Sweat will be a matchup to watch. Sweat has been one of the best D tackles in the league and the nation this year. Cooper Beebe, who we interviewed, by the way, I think might be the best guard in the country 2 years running now. He really could be a first-round pick if he keeps this up. I don't know if you saw the pancake block that went viral in the last week against, I think, Houston. He destroyed a Houston linebacker. And it went viral. I tweeted it out if you want to see it. But Cooper Beebe, man, has been on fire. I still don't think Cooper Beebe has not allowed a sack since the 2020 season. And he played left tackle, right tackle, left guard for Kansas State. He plays all over the offensive line. He's still an elite offensive lineman, man. So check out the interview with him. He's a terrific kid as well. Really funny guy, honestly. But you mentioned the run game for Kansas State and why Texas needs to stop that in this game. That's the same thing on the other side of the ball, man. My biggest matchup I'm watching is, can Kansas State stop Jonathan Brooks, who has been one of the best backs in college football this past season? He right now is the number 1 running back on PFF's 2024 NFL Draft Big Board, which is constructed by Trevor Sikkema, our lead draft analyst. He also leads all Power 5 running backs with 58 forced missed tackles this year. So even after losing Bijan Robinson, even after losing Roschon Johnson, they still have one of the best running backs in the country. And his backup, C.J. Baxter, was the number 1 running back recruit coming out of high school. He's a true freshman right now. So Texas's running back dynasty, I mean, there are a lot of other schools are in the running for running back U, obviously, but Texas, what they've been doing the last few years, man, has been really incredible at the running back position. Kansas State, meanwhile, is 97th in the country in team run defense grade, right about 70.2. Also, they're allowing over 5 yards per attempt, which is the 9th most in the Power 5. So I think they need to stack the box, man, take the game out of Jonathan Brooks' hands, put it in Malik Murphy's inexperienced hands, and see what the redshirt freshman can do, man. Because I think that's the way Kansas State can win this game is, 1, by having a dominant run game of themselves, and 2, of stopping Texas's run game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what it's going to come down to on both sides. You've got 2 teams who are really trying to avoid throwing the ball. So whoever has more rushing yards in this game, whoever wins time of possession, whoever can finish drives, and I think get themselves in good spots on early downs and sustain drives, keep yourself in 3rd and short. Kansas State, both of these teams are explosive in the run game too. It might just come down to who shakes a couple tackles and makes some big plays. Over the last 3 weeks, Kansas State leads the country with 35 explosive runs. I mean, they are. When I tell you they are creating creases and getting after it and getting vertical, that, like I said, they have 4 different guys who can really run the ball, including Will Howard, who are a big time threat running the ball. You mentioned Brooks and Baxter. You're going to see some big, nasty football being played by these 2 teams. I think the team, obviously, we've said this before in these running kind of games, who's getting ahead early. You got 2 teams trying to avoid their quarterback. Who needs to throw the ball in the 4th quarter and who can avoid it? It's going to be a big thing, whoever gets out ahead early and gets in their rhythm. The one thing you mentioned, Devondre Sweat, the one thing I do like also for Kansas State in this game and their run game is the way their run game is designed kind of takes defensive tackles out of it, because as much as they pull and get off tackle and do some things, they really just kind of wash the rest of that down inside. So Sweat, he's going to have to get some really, really quick penetration here if he wants to make an impact, because Kansas State, they don't really line up and like run just right, zone right at you. Yeah. Like take Oklahoma's running game and the way that Texas could kind of at times control that because they just run right at you. Kansas State doesn't really do that. They're actually very well equipped to avoid him and make their linebackers, make second level guys make reads and beat him.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, one of the best one-on-one matchups of the entire weekend, maybe the entire season, is Cooper Beebe against T'Vondre Sweat. So if 50 is lining up against T'Vondre Sweat on a lot of reps, you better tune in for that, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. But ultimately, Dalton, who are you going with in this Big 12 game?
There is something about Kansas State I like. I think we know what to expect from Texas right now, especially with a backup in there. I believe firmly they are going to find some way between Brooks and maybe a couple play action hits to Worthy and Whittington and that they're going to find their way to, I think, to 24, maybe 27 points, something like that. But K-State's raging hot, and I just like that they have found who they are. Right, I think earlier in the year they got in a shootout with Missouri trying to throw the ball, and they just got beat, obviously, by a 60-plus yard field goal. Oklahoma State, they threw 3 interceptions, and I think they just understand that their run game, their O-line, 2 good backs, 2 good running quarterbacks can make big plays, and it's not traditional, at least not nowadays. I should say it's not modern, but they get it done, and they're not just a team that lines up and just runs one play like Oregon State lines up, right, and they run like 2 plays over and over and over. There is a ton of diversity in this run game, and Texas's run defense is essentially T'Vondre Sweat is great, and everything else is sound, but they have issues defending the quarterback run, albeit in a small sample. Dylan Gabriel got some on him. Jason Bean had a couple runs on him. Jalen Milroe. I'm telling you, maybe other than Milroe, Avery Johnson is as good an athlete as any of those guys, if not better. He actually, you brought up Pat White. I just think of Kansas State. It reminds me a lot of, remember Colin Klein?
Yep.
He's not as big as Colin Klein. He's a little thinner and probably a little faster, but same idea of hey, we've got this wicked athletic quarterback, and we're not afraid to show it. I think Kansas State's run game, I think they're blazing hot right now. If they just avoid early mistakes, and if you see them have early success, especially on first down, I think Kansas State can go in there and pull this off. If Quinn Ewers was playing, I might lean the other way, but that might be the equalizer, because the one thing I could tell, you could tell Texas had a distinct advantage was at quarterback, right? Will Howard, occasionally good throw, especially in play action, but it's just he's not going to carry you. Quinn Ewers for stretches can carry you, and if he's not in there and it's Murphy, this is a dead even game to me, and I'm going to take Kansas State 31-27.
Woo! I love it. The upset pick. I'm going with Texas in this game. Although, the 2 turnover-worthy plays for Murphy were ugly, but Steve Sarkisian in his press conference kind of broke them down a little bit. The interception was kind of on the receiver. The fumble was a little bit on the offensive line as well. Don't get me wrong, Malik Murphy had some up and down plays in that game. Don't get me wrong. But I do think he's got something more in the tank than what he showed in that game against BYU. I think Texas will pull this out at home without Quinn Ewers. I think Jonathan Brooks can really take advantage of that weak Kansas State run defense right now. I got 28-23. The Longhorns riding Brooks to victory, keeping the playoff hopes alive. I think Texas stays alive in the college football playoff race with a victory over Kansas State.